Robert, thank you so much for staying with me. And we ended the first break talking about the virtual campaign last year about God's kingdom. And now there's a campaign going on right now that is so important for witnesses and non-witnesses, Robert. And tell us a little about that campaign going on now, please.
Well, we have a campaign that's inviting folks, all of our neighbors and all interested ones, to a virtual meeting, but it's our holy day. It's Jehovah's Witnesses. If you use the term, we don't typically use the term holiday, but that's exactly what it is. It's a holy day. It's the holiest day on the calendar. It's the only holy day that Jesus specifically said, keep doing this in remembrance of me. And we call it the memorial. Some call it the Last Supper or the Lord's evening meal, all proper. But it is a very important day. And what's different about this, most Christendom has Good Friday. Those who practice Judaism, they have Passover. This ends up being on Passover this year, same day. But we celebrate this because it is on the day that he actually died. And so when you look back to that time period, Jesus was very clear. He said, keep doing this in remembrance of me. He had just ended one celebration, fulfilled the law by really officially celebrating the last official Passover. And then he introduced this new arrangement that would replace it. And that Passover was done when, on the same day, Nisan 14, and it was done on the same day for each year. And they would go by the moon, the first full moon after the spring equinox. And so on that night, the moon is full. We celebrate it on that day every year. We celebrate it after sundown because that's when the Jewish families would get together, because that's when they would start their day. In fact, they at around sunset they would begin roasting the lamb and preparing, and then later on that night they would actually eat the Passover. So after he ate the Passover with his 11 faithful apostles, he introduced a new celebration. He said, keep doing this in remembrance of me. It's in remembrance of the fact that I'm going to give my life for you, my blood and my flesh for you. And so it had appropriate symbols at the time, the wine, which came from the Passover celebration, and also the bread, the unfermented cakes, which came from the Passover celebration as well. And so he introduced this, told his apostles what to do, and we gladly and joyously celebrate this every year. And especially at this time, right in the weeks prior to it, we spend a lot of time talking to others about the sacrifice that Jesus made. Where would we be without that ransom? Of course, we know Jesus is in heaven. He's the King of God's kingdom. He will soon turn his attention to this earth. But we also know that when he was here, he made all of that possible by sacrificing his life, by giving his life as a ransom for mankind, for obedient mankind. And so you can really understand the words that he said in John 3:16, which are famous, of course, because they're even shown at baseball games, for God loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten Son, so that we may gain everlasting life. And so this is the moment, this is the day. And on that very day, when he gave his life, we get together with our friends, in this time virtually, in this year, just like it was last year, and we will be able to commemorate that.
And Robert, when we look at just the coordination and the planning it takes to put on an event of this magnitude worldwide, looking back to last year when the pandemic hit, was there ever any doubt that the memorial wouldn't take place?
No, there was no doubt that it wouldn't take, or it would take place. There was no doubt that we would hold the memorial because the memorial doesn't depend on congregations. It doesn't depend on Zoom. It doesn't depend on kingdom halls. Spirituality transcends all that. It depends on our relationship with our God. And so even if we were shut off from society, even if we had no lights, Jehovah's Witnesses would celebrate on that day. They'd celebrate either, and many do, either in a cell because they're in isolation, like in Eritrea, our dear brothers, some of whom have been released, but who languished there for 26 years. Or like in Russia, many of our brothers are in prison. Or in Korea, where our brothers suffered in prison. Or in other places right now that are oppressing our people. They don't have Zoom. They don't have a virtual convention or a virtual memorial online. They have themselves in Jehovah. And what they try to do, and we've heard this. In fact, last year, I will say this, there were some missionaries coming back from their assignment because they were being brought home because of the pandemic. And they got stuck at the airport. And so they celebrated right there together, just the four of them. Somebody said a prayer, they considered scriptures, and they did what they could to have those emblems in place. And so no matter what, it will happen. And I think last year, yeah, we were questioning, is it possible that we wouldn't actually meet for the memorial? There's no doubt about this time when last year we were saying, is that even possible? And the answer was, not only is it possible, it's exactly what's going to happen. And guess what? It puts us right back to the time when our first century Christians, who were the first century Christians, they were Jews at first, and the Passover was a family celebration. And while they came together as congregations once Christianity happened, once Jesus left the earth, they had congregations and they gathered. Before that, they were gathering in homes. Jesus was in an upper room. So you don't need anything fancy. It's probably, and that's the beauty of the celebration too. Jesus introduced such an elegant, simple celebration. We could obey him with just two emblems, prayer and a Bible. And we don't even need the physical Bible. We can take these beautiful thoughts out of our mind and just talk about John 3:16, John 17:3, all the scriptures that relate to the ransom. You think about what we have. It will never be taken from us. Being an organized people, the most basic of organizations is the family. And whether that's 1 or 10, we will celebrate the memorial. Now this year, we will gather with our congregations, but we'll gather in our homes virtually, and we'll do it just like we do the meetings. We'll have our own emblems. We'll have our wine, our red wine, and our bread, our unfermented bread, and many of the families will have made that bread themselves. We've taught people how to do that. And it will be a special day, no matter where it is.
And Robert, I know last year my team was doing research after the memorial, and they just saw the beautiful pictures that ones had with their little memorial set up, the way families were gathered in front of their TV or their device, and really celebrating this most important day in human history. And again, no matter if one is one of Jehovah's Witnesses or not, this is the most important day in mankind's history. And Robert, when we look at all the links that ones go through to attend this, it really shows that when you hear what Jesus said to do and do it, it's not only makes you feel better, but it makes your family feel better, and it's just a really positive vibe. And today, especially when it comes to religion, you have ones who say, well, I think Jesus would do this, but this command to commemorate this memorial, we know what Jesus did, and we know what Jesus told us. So that's, and then Robert, I was reading something last year too, that in some parts of the world, they even broadcasted this on live TV.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. So there are places in the world, obviously. It's hard to believe, but who don't have internet, who don't have internet that is actually stable enough or fast enough. And so in parts of Africa and now in many parts of the world, we are using broadcast through the air. It's still there, those broadcast signals, to get our message out, because, frankly, we want to get to everybody as possible. We're most concerned about getting to our brothers and sisters who may be in a remote area. They're not served perhaps by an internet coverage. And so the governing body has asked actually public information desks and service departments around the world to look for areas that might have a need, and to negotiate with local television stations to broadcast our meetings and this special memorial. It's interesting too, though, on the other side of the coin, that we saw some miracles last year. For example, in Alaska, you can imagine that the congregations there, they have very vast territories, and there was this one community where they didn't have good internet. It wasn't stable, and so they had no idea how they were going to do the memorial. They thought that it might be a family celebration. They weren't going to be able to gather as a congregation, certainly physically. And it was, I think, 2 weeks beforehand they got a notice that everyone had been upgraded, and they were able to. And for the memorial, they have folks who travel and would have to stay overnight in order to, because they were 180 miles away, in order to attend. And all of a sudden now they were covering all of their territory. Many who wouldn't have been able to come attended, and they had the internet to do it. So there's always a way. And like Christians from the beginning of Christianity, the stumbling block has been made into a stepping stone. The obstacle has been made into an opportunity. And we've seen that over and over again around our branch territory.
Absolutely. That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. And Robert, looking at the invitation, it also talks about an event happening prior to the observance of the Lord's evening meal. Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Well, the week before our memorial now, we used to have it the week, I believe, after, but the week before our memorial now, we have a talk that's being given around the world in 240 lands. It's entitled, the theme is A Pearl of High Value. And it relates to Jesus' illustration about a merchant who basically sold everything in order to obtain this pearl because he valued it so much. And it wasn't to take that pearl and resell it, but it really was something that he valued and kept. So Jesus applied that to the kingdom, to our spirituality. And he said, really, what are we willing to sacrifice in order to please our Father, his Father, Jehovah, and him? What are we willing to sacrifice to attain this kingdom and to be a subject of this kingdom now and in the future? And so that's being given on March 21st all over the world. But actually, the weekend, for most, it will be the weekend of March 20th and 21st. Some it will be a week before or a week after. But for the most part, around the world, it's being given on the same day. And we're gathering in congregations virtually in order to view this, be a part of this. And we're of course inviting all of our neighbors to do the same. And so they can go to jw.org, look for a meeting, a local meeting, leave a message, either send an email or leave a message. Of course, there's no obligation, there's no money, and they'll be contacted as to how to get a Zoom code. They're not gonna, that's their address to the meeting now, to get a Zoom code. And we'll welcome them at this special talk, A Pearl of High Value.
I love it. And Robert, they can do that for the memorial too, correct?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and we would encourage them to do so.
All right. Sounds good. So, Robert, I want to hold you over for one more segment, because I want to talk about the regional convention for 2021, as well as some changes to the website, translation of the Bibles in different languages. So hold you over one more time, and then I promise I'll let you go, okay?
You got it. Thank you, Paul. Of course.